Hello everyone, I'm Elf Owls, and welcome to another match analysis for Season 10 of the Uber Club League. Last time I talked about my Week 1 match in which I fought the Akron Agrons and won 3-0. This time we're in Week 2 facing off against Steve and the Waterdeep Wobbuffets. Steve also won his Week 1 match against the Mighty Miltanks, 6-0 in his case, being a full sweep. Looking at his team, I think he has one of the stronger rosters this season, with Archeops, Verizian, Dracloak, Sharpedo, Klinklang, his first round pick Chandelure, Licky Licky, Piloswine, our Lord and Savior Chargebug, Drampa, and Escavalier rounding things out. This team has a really good matchup into me. I think almost every Pokemon on Steve's team can be used effectively against my team. Looking over the Wobbuffets team in general, the speed tiers are really interesting because compared to my team, they have a lot of speed stats crowding up that base 90 to 110 range, which is kind of just top half almost, and I don't really have that section covered at all. This also makes the Wobbuffets a pretty fast-looking team overall, makes things inconvenient for my Raichu and my base 90s like the Evil and Kangaskhan, since if I use them, I'll have to invest a lot in speed, while Steve's able to kind of take advantage of that speed gap I have, invest more in bulk. On the other hand, though, I do have the fastest Pokemon between our two teams with Noivern, and I have the opportunity to build some of my slower offensive Pokemon to take advantage of his 80 down to 50 speed gap. Steve's hazard game is also pretty good. The Wobbuffets don't have that many setters, but Piloswine is actually pretty good at getting rocks up, especially against my team, and Chargebug is also bulky enough to take a hit and set sticky webs pretty consistently. Their hazard removal is a little lacking though, with two defog users that probably don't want to make room for defog in their movesets. That's like the main overall stuff I'm noticing overall, so let's get into individual Pokemon. This is how I'm going to be organizing the threat list that I'm trying to prepare for. First, there are a few of Steve's Pokemon that I can kind of count out. Klinklang feels pretty useless here. Its Steel type is decent against some of my team, but it doesn't hit back hard since I can just switch to Mudsdale or Pincurchin or even Blaziken to take those Steel or Electric moves. It just doesn't pose enough of a threat even if it checks a few things. Dracloak is also something I'm not going to worry about too much since I can't really see what it would want to do in this matchup. It has a few nice attributes. The speed tier is nice against my team, like I said, and its typing is actually pretty decent with Ghost Stab to cover most of my team, and also the ability to resist both of Blaziken's stab moves. But it only has base 80 attack, so it's stopped pretty hard by anything bulky on my team. With those two out of the way, I want to talk about the team that I would see coming from Steve. Chandelure feels like the most obvious bring since Ghost Fire is perfect coverage against my team, and Chandelure takes advantage of that so much. Even my bulkiest Pokemon can't reliably switch into sets with boosting items, and they'll get worn down really quickly over the course of the game. I really can't afford to give Chandelure that many free turns, or I'll just get broken down. Sharpedo is the next big threat, and yeah, this feels like another obvious bring. After a few speed boosts, it outspeeds everything on my team, and it has the coverage to one-hit or two-hit KO just about anything that I could throw at it, depending on the set it's running. It doesn't have a very hard time getting those speed boosts either, between just being able to use Protect to stall turns, and also forcing so many switches against my slower Pokemon that it threatens out. Sharpedo makes a really good core with Chandelure, I think, especially in this format of Draft League. It's so much offense, and it's just impossible to properly prep for both of them unless we were to have very specific defensive answers. These are the two Pokemon that I'm really scared of on Steve's team. It's actually a core I was thinking of drafting myself, but Steve got to it first, so good on him. I'm just super scared of them. Next to that, I think Piloswine is actually a pretty likely bring as well. In my initial team building, I wasn't too concerned about it, but the more calcs I ran, the more annoying this guy became to deal with, I realized. Piloswine can actually take a big hit from a majority of my team with the right defensive spread and Eviolite, and it can respond by either setting rocks or hitting back hard. Ground ice coverage is really good against my team, getting perfect neutral coverage and a ton of super effective coverage, and Ice Shard means that my faster ground resists will have to avoid this matchup or be at high health to deal with it. This could just be a huge pain to break through. The last Pokemon I'm really expecting to see is Verizian, which is a really good offensive check to a lot of my team. It uses the base 108 speed to outrun and KO a decent chunk of my team with its fighting stab moves, and the rest of my team, it doesn't take them out in one hit maybe, but it's usually bulky enough to tank my response and fire off another attack. On the other hand though, I do have nice ways of dealing with this since Noivern and Raichu both outspeed and have good super effective options against it. These are kind of the 4 Pokemon that I think are nearly guaranteed brings. They just have such good use against my team. The last 2 slots, though, are kind of up in the air. I have my guesses, though. I think one of his normal types, either Licky or Drampa, will show up. Both are pretty decent matchups into my first pick, Decidueye. They're immune to Ghost, so I think Steve might find that pretty important. Licky provides extra utility on top of that with Wish, and it can run very good defensive sets to wall specific threats, like a specially defensive set that can shut down Raichu decently well unless I run Focus Blast. Drampa, on the other hand, feels like a more complete check to Decidueye since it also resists grass, or it can even use Sap Sipper to be immune to grass if it wants to. It's also similar to Piloswine because it can take a hit from most of my team and hit back really, really hard. I think I'm expecting Licky more, but either one's a potential bring. In the last slot, I'm expecting one of the bug types to show up for utility purposes. Charge-a-Bug was Steve's lead last week, and Sticky Web is not bad into my team. It kind of lets his Chandelure run wild against some of my Pokemon that would usually be faster, like Raichu, Kangaskhan, Thievul, Blaziken. And then on the other hand, Escavalier is nice as like a bulky offensive piece, since it basically swamps my low tiers for the most part, and it's a good normal resistance to switch into Kangaskhan and then maybe start wall breaking from there. The last Pokemon not accounted for was Archeops, and I'm really not sure what to make of this one. I think it has a niche. It can maybe set rocks or just run an attacking set. I'm not really sure. It's just going to be offensive. I'm not expecting it too much, but I can see a build where Steve brings this to get more fast offense instead of the utility roles to fill out those last slots. With this potential team, I decide I can't really build very defensively against it. I need to out-offense the offense with strong, fast threats. This actually won't include electric terrain this week, which I really wanted to bring for Raichu, but we need every useful team slot we can get, and unfortunately, Pincurchin just doesn't quite cut it as a Pokemon this time. It doesn't have enough good matchups. It's a huge momentum drain with not that much utility. This matchup is also pretty rough for Decidueye, since Steve has those very good normal types to switch into, and every one of his faster threats can outspeed and deal heavy damage to us as Decidueye. So, without electric terrain, that leads us to try and find a different win condition than Raichu, and I'm hoping to see Blaziken fill that role with a Life Orb and Agility. We're probably trying to find a boost by setting up on a defensive Pokemon that we force out, and after that boost we can sweep pretty well with our coverage. Close Combat is the main move to span here, with Blaze Kick giving me enough power to take out those fire weaknesses without resorting to Flare Blitz and its huge recoil. Knockoff is mainly there for Chandelure and the off chance of Dracloak coming, otherwise I would be running Earthquake. And I also needed to run Jolly to outspeed Scarf Archeops after a boost, so we actually miss a few guaranteed KOs that would come from Adamant. It's a bit unfortunate, but we'll just need some chip damage in before we go for a full sweep. The next bring is Noivern, running an offensive set meant to check Virizion and maybe take a hit from Sharpedo without ice moves. We are EV to take an Adamant, Life Orb, Stone Edge from Virizion, and then outspeed and hit back hard with our stab move of choice. Because of another set that I'll go over later, I actually felt comfortable not running Boots on Noivern, so I went with Wide Lens this time to help our Hurricanes hit a little more often, hopefully. I'd really like that insurance against Virizion with a Flying Stab. Frisk is also very useful as an ability this time, and I'm specifically running it with the thought in mind of scouting out Chandelure's item. We can probably switch into Chandelure once and take a hard Shadow Ball, and then I can find out right then and there if it's running Choice Scarf to outspeed me. If it's not, that's a free Draco, and if it is, I can switch out knowing it's locked into its move. Defog and Roost are pretty self-explanatory. Noivern is just a solid offensive check to some specific threats. Next up is Mudsdale, which is our main defensive piece this week. We're running a physically defensive set with enough special defense to take 2 timid flamethrowers from Chandelure. Earthquake and Rock Slide is really solid coverage, and Toxic is nice to hit something like Virizion or a bulky Piloswine on the switch. Stealth Rock is going to be really important for us as well to set up in this game because Blaziken does really need that chip damage, as I said, to get a sweep going. So hopefully we'll use this Mudsdale as a switch into something at walls and then set up rocks on either a weak attack or a switch. That's the goal. Raichu keeps up the offensive pressure even without terrain, since we do naturally outspeed everything already. Well, almost. We're running max speed to tie with Archeops, and I usually don't like investing to speed tie with things. It's just a lot to invest to not even get a guaranteed outspeed. but we would be running near max to beat Virizion anyway, so it really didn't cost us much this time, so I'm okay with doing that. Life Orb with Volt Switch and Psychic for the stab coverage is really all we need, so the last two move slots are important utility. Extreme Speed is being run for Sharpedo, and Sharpedo alone, since I'm very afraid of its speed boosts, and I think it'll come down to something with priority finishing it off. The investment of 8 attack EVs hits a bit of a jump point and lets me do just a few extra points of damage to Sharpedo specifically. And lastly, Wish is nice since it gives me the potential to pass some light healing over to something like Blaziken or Mudsdale, or one of our last two brings, which I'll go over in a second. This Raichu was originally going to be Choice Scarf to outspeed a +1 Sharpedo, but I do think Steve will be able to maneuver around enough to get Sharpedo up to +2 before Raichu can come in, so I went with this Life Orb Extreme Speed set instead. Next up is Kangaskhan, and this serves multiple utility roles. We're making ourselves a decent answer to Chandelure with Assault Vest, Speed to outrun, and Scrappy to hit its ghost typing with our stab normal moves. We're also trying to help against Sharpedo with double priority in Fake Out and Sucker Punch to chip it down into range of Extreme Speed from Raichu. Those are the main two things we're trying to get Kangaskhan to do, but the moves Double Edge and Drain Punch also turn us into a decent catch-all attacker that can heal itself a bit. We do outspeed a decent amount of Steve's team with this. Pretty straightforward stuff. In the last slot, I really wasn't sure what to do with it because I think every one of our remaining options had some pretty serious flaws against most of Steve's best brings on the team. Since I'm running pretty heavy offense though, I decided to go with Berserker here as an anti-lead. This is a wacky set, but the goal here is to stop any opposing lead from getting hazards up and then survive to offer some utility later in the match. Against Chargebug, we taunt and stop the Sticky Web, and then U-turn out as Chargebug either switches or fires off an electric move into Mudsdale. Against Piloswine, we can Fake Out and then taunt while avoiding the Earthquake with our Air Balloon, and from there, Steely Spirit, boosted Iron Head, actually has a chance to KO if it's just max HP. Against Focus Sash Archeops, we Fake Out to break the Sash, and then Iron Head for the KO while avoiding Earthquake. This lead would still get the rocks up, that Archeops would, but we would still be up 6-5 in that scenario, and that's still favorable for me, I think. Even if none of those guys lead, Berserker with an Air Balloon still has a great matchup into Piloswine and Archeops, so we can switch out from the lead slot and come back in later to handle them. Iron Head also does great damage into most of Steve's Pokemon. We have enough speed to outrun and chunk down Modest Drampa, and Fake Out is also my final priority move to try and stop a Sharpedo sweep. Yeah, our team's priority is kind of whack with 2 Fake Outs, a Sucker Punch, and a Raichu Extreme Speed, but I think it's our best shot at keeping that Sharpedo in check. This is going to be a very tough matchup, and it's going to take some really good positioning around Steve's biggest threats to grab the win. Let's get into the battle. Alright, my predictions were actually pretty good this time. All 4 of my most expected brings are here, and Steve actually opted to bring in both normal types instead of one of the bugs like I thought. That's fair. Lickilicky and Drampa actually fill pretty different roles, and they're both pretty good in the matchup. So yeah, sure. That notably makes Kangaskhan a lot better, since with no Escavalier here, Steve doesn't actually have any resistance to scrappy normal type moves, which is great. The game plan is still the same though. I see a Piloswine, and I don't want it getting rocks up early. So Berserker is going to be the lead to stop that, and if we don't see Piloswine as his lead, I can tuck Berserker away for later. Good luck to Steve. And the Piloswine does lead. This is exactly what I wanted. We'll start with a Fake Out for a little bit of damage, and then on the next turn, the Taunt, as I do stop the rocks from going up. This is great. The first 2 turns went exactly according to plan, but now I do have a small decision to make. The Fake Out damage actually tells me that this Piloswine is invested in a lot of physical bulk, so an Iron Head will probably not kill here, and Steve could also be switching out to preserve this Piloswine for later. Given those statements, U-turn seems good here, but I decided to go for an Iron Head anyway, because I do have the Balloon attack to avoid the Earthquake, and Iron Head is still hitting any switch in for major damage. That's more benefits in my opinion than the positional advantage that U-turn would get me. Steve is going to switch out here into Virizion, and it comes in to take 53% from the Iron Head. That actually implies quite a bit of defense investment, maybe even max HP in defense. But given that, yeah dang, Iron Head from Berserker is very strong. With my Balloon not popped yet, I think Berserker is actually pretty valuable to keep around for Piloswine. So I'm going to switch out to Noivern here, take the potential fighting type move. But as I do that, anticipating a move, first the leftovers. I take the Leaf Blade instead, as Steve might have been predicting to switch out to Mudsdale or something like that. I know Verzian is pretty valuable to Steve here, so I think a switch out feels pretty guaranteed. At the very least, I don't think he's going for another Leaf Blade. Licky Licky seems like his specially defensive answer to take care of Noivern maybe, so I'm going to predict that and make the double out to Mudsdale. And as I do that, the Licky Licky does actually come in. Now this is a good opportunity, I think, to get my rocks up, but first I'd actually kind of like to poison the Licky Licky. Getting passive damage on the wall, that would be really nice. So as Licky Licky goes for a wish, I just miss a toxic. That's too bad, but I can't say it's game changing, because, you know, it's just a toxic. The wish recipient is definitely going to be Verizian. It's the only thing that's really damaged. So as that switch happens, I am just going to go ahead and get my rocks up, and then the Verizian is going to heal back to full. I could have brought Noivern in on this predicted switch to Verizian, but rocks are going to be so important for this matchup, and I'm glad I have them down early. We need to chip a few things down into Blaziken KO range, and we also need to chip down Sharpedo into range of our priority moves, so we can start that early. Every time it switches in, it's getting closer and closer to some of our priority moves that take it out. That's thinking pretty far ahead, though. Right now, we need an answer to Verizian, and that's going to be Noivern again, as I come in to hopefully take a hit, but I just get hit by the Toxic, which isn't too concerning. Licky Licky is probably the switch in again, but I decided to mix it up this time, and I'm going to go for Hurricane. I do still want to pose a threat to this Verizian. I want him to know that I have Hurricane and I'm willing to use it, and it should do okay damage into the Licky Licky anyway. And we are going to see that the Licky Licky does switch in, and we miss. That's unfortunate. Glad those wide lens are putting in the work, right, Noivern? As for this, Mudsdale is always going to be my switch into Licky Licky, I think. So I am going to come in after this toxic damage. And what's the move I take? It's a knockoff. Losing my leftovers, a bit unfortunate. Defense boost is something to compensate, I guess, but, you know, I'd rather have that healing. But it's not the worst thing in the world. And on the next turn, Licky Licky is able to outspeed, and it goes for an Ice Beam, actually, which I think is a great move that Steve included to better handle Noivern. I think that was smart. But I'm glad I invested that special defense into Mudsdale. It only took 28%, and I am able to get a Toxic off in response, and I actually hit it this time, which is great. On the next turn, I decide I'm going to Earthquake for damage. Just, you know, get some pressure onto the Licky Licky. And the Chandelure actually switches into Take It with the Air Balloon, which it reveals. It takes the Earthquake, obviously, because it's immune. But this is actually a relief overall, since without Boots, it takes enough rocks damage that it is in KO range for Blaziken now. That's the one threat I really need to chip down for a Blaziken sweep, so that's great. As for dealing with the Chandelure on this turn, I don't want Mudsdale taking a big hit, so I switch out to my main check, which is going to be Kangaskhan. As Chandelure actually pulls out a Substitute, which is interesting. I'm not sure what his plan is yet. So I just want to break the Substitute. I'm going to go for Double Edge to do that. And that actually pops the Balloon, which is really interesting. I didn't know that would happen behind a Substitute. And then I get hit by a Toxic, so this is a Sub-Toxic Chandelure. Interesting bring that I wasn't expecting. I actually do like that set, though. I like using it myself, personally. So, Chandelure's down into easy Double Edge KO range now, so I'm going to go for it. But this time, Piloswine is going to switch in to Take It, and it doesn't take that much damage. I really should have seen this coming. Rocks are going up, aren't they? On the next turn, unfortunately, a Drain Punch does a lot less damage than I was expecting, and then Piloswine is able to retaliate by going for Rocks. Sucks that I just let the Rocks go up like this after I played so well to stop them in the lead slot, but at least I've kept them away until now, so that's a lot of damage that I avoided. Kangaskhan definitely doesn't KO the Piloswine from here, and toxic damage is racking up on me, so I'm going to have to switch out. I want to preserve Kangaskhan for later, and I do switch to Berserker. Using my Air Balloon, I dodged that Earthquake that was going to target Kangaskhan. On the next turn, Steve is just going to go for the Ice Shard, pops the Balloon as he sacks off Piloswine to the Iron Head. I get the first KO of the match, 6-5. Chandelure is the easier revenge, so I'm going to switch out to Kangaskhan to take the Penetrable Flamethrower, but instead what happens is that I dodge the Fire Blast, that really sucks for Steve, I'm going to be honest. That matters quite a bit. For my calcs, a Fire Blast plus a Toxic damage was always going to take me out here. So that's unfortunate, but I mean, I'm going to have to take advantage of it since Drain Punch is going to be for the KO here. But instead, Steve decides to preserve Chandelure, goes into Lickilicky, and I hit it for solid damage while I get some HP back. At this point, Lickilicky has revealed its moveset to be Wish, Knockoff, and Ice Beam, and I'm guessing the last move is Protect. Chandelure is also chipped down, and the Lickilicky is under a lot of pressure to Wish right now. So it's time to set up a Blaziken sweep, I think. So I'm just going to make the hard switch out after this turn. And as I do come in, I see the Wish come up, and now I think the Protect is coming, so this is where I Agility up, I think. And, oh, the Chandelure comes in. Self-Rocks doesn't take it out, and I Agility, and then it gets 80% of its HP back from the Wish. I'll be honest, I didn't think about that possibility. Even if I had, like, I wouldn't have thought Chandelure would have recovered that much. That's kind of crazy. I mean, I should have seen it coming. Lickilicky's HP stat is huge, but yeah, good play from Steve. This does really suck though, since I don't have a guaranteed KO on Chandelure anymore with Knockoff, since it's not holding an item at this point. The balloon's popped. So I still have to try to go for it since I'm already here. I want a sweep to happen, so I'm going to go for Knockoff, and the Chandelure lives on 1%, and it does indeed get the Shadow Ball off. It doesn't take me out, because I do have a little bit of bulk on me, but I only have 2 attacks left now before I go down to the Life Orb damage. I'm really regretting that Jolly Nature over Adamant right now, especially because the Archeops isn't even here. But anyway, I'll use the first of my 2 remaining attacks to just finish off the Chandelure. Next up, for the Revenge, it's actually Sharpedo, which I thought was really interesting. I was a little confused. I think Aqua Jet would have made some sense here if he has it, but you could also be going for the double Protect to maybe outspeed and sweep from there. If that's the case, Agility would be a really interesting option on the Protect that's going, but I'm not going to risk that. I don't want to play around this relatively low chance of Steve getting a double Protect and then sweeping. That's really unlikely, I think. He is going to Protect once, though, and he just gets the close combat protected, and then he gets the 1 speed boost. Maybe he's going for another, but I just gotta go for another close combat, I think. And instead, he just goes into Virizion, which takes the close combat not that well, but it does take it. And then I go down to Life Orb Chip. So I guess that Sharpedo was more of a scouting play, forcing me into close combat, so I would go down to Life Orb Chip on not KOing the Virizion. That was actually a pretty smart play by Steve, pivoting around to avoid another KO. So yeah, Blaziken goes down here without the sweep that I wanted for it, but we still did break the team down a little bit. We're still in a pretty good position. Raichu is an easy revenge on the Virizion, and I do take it out with a Life Orb Psychic, not that I need the Life Orb. And then next up is going to be Drampa, which I really have no idea what this thing wants to do right now, so I am just going to pivot out, use a Volt Switch to get some damage, and then go to my least useful member, which is Berserker. And then at this point he goes for a Calm Mind, which, okay, yeah, now I see what this thing's doing. That's actually kind of threatening because it's pretty bulky and it can get a pretty strong attack off right now. So to get as much damage off as I can, maybe flinch the Drampa, I decide I'm just going to go for the Iron Head straight up. And we do a very solid 46% activate Berserk, but no flinch as Drampa just takes me out with the Flamethrower. So that was scary, and this Drampa is still technically scary, but it's at low enough health that just about anything can revenge kill it now. So I am going to choose Kangaskhan, and Drain Punch hits everything left on the team super effectively, so I'm just going to do that, and get some health back as well, as the Drampa does just go down pretty unceremoniously. On the revenge, Sharpedo's in, and to preserve my Fake Out, I decide I am going to switch out. I want to sack Noivern, and the Frisk actually discovers the Life Orb. Sharpedo goes for Protect and fails, and on the next turn, it is going to go for another Protect to get more speed, and I just Draco into that Protect. I think that was a misplay on my part, since I could have gone for Roost here. Maybe I would have been out of range of Sharpedo's next attack then, but I'm not sure. And like even if it had decided to attack, like I wasn't getting that attack off, it would have taken me out probably. So Roost was always the play. That was just a mistake. On the next turn, I'm at low enough health now that Dark Pulse is easily going to be the KO, and Sharpedo takes a little bit of Life Orb chip, which is important. Kangaskhan's my switch in now to hopefully get a fake out, but Steve actually, he kind of knows that's coming, and he switches to Lickilicky to stall that out for the one turn. That's smart, since after a Drain Punch takes it out here, I don't have that much health left after the toxic damage, as you can see. So all the Sharpedo has to do is come in, click Protect once, and then as I fail a Sucker Punch, I'm just going to go down to the toxic damage. Yeah, smart positioning from Steve to get boosted speed on the Sharpedo as he's staring down my last 2 Mons. But what he doesn't know is that I do have extreme speed on the Raichu to take him out. However, after a Calc, I realized that with some HP investment, which he might have, extreme speed doesn't guarantee the KO from this range. So to be extra safe, I switch in Mudsdale first, and I'm just basically sacking it for Life Orb chip. I do go down to this Hydro Pump to get that damage, and now Sharpedo is in easy range for an extreme speed, I think. So Raichu is going to come in, and we are going to click the unexpected extreme speed to claim the 1-0 victory. So, good game to Steve. I think he played really, really well, but I'm glad I managed to lock down the victory with another creative set at the end there. Despite that, I think I was playing kind of messy towards the end game, where I was relying on having enough sacrifices more than anything to make progress, like with chipping down the Sharpedo. I think there were definitely some plays I could have made that would have preserved a better differential, like that potential roost on Noivern in the last few turns there. But my play did end up working out, since I think my early game played out really well, allowed me to take those sacrifices later on. As for like what went really, really well, I'm really happy with how the Berserker lead worked out, and then I had the answers early on to deal with this pivoting around through things like Virizion and Lickilicky. It's my late game play that I kind of want to clean up in the future. That's a wrap on week 2 though, and we're headed strong into week 3. This time we're going to be playing Tony and the Mighty Miltanks, and in my prep so far, the Miltanks are a really awkward team to build around this season. It's looking like it'll be a unique challenge to play. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.